All right, I will call the Senate Judiciary Committee to order. Would the Secretary please take the roll?
Senator Harris. Senator Dondero Luke. Senator Orenshaw. Senator Nguyen. Senator Hansen. Senator Krasner. Senator Stone. Chair Scheible.
Here, thank you. Please mark those senators who aren't here yet present when they arrive. And welcome back, everybody, to Senate Judiciary. We have two bills to hear this afternoon from our fantastic Attorney General. Before we jump into that, I thought today would be as good a day as any to address a little piece of housekeeping since we have so many of you here. And we very much appreciate you signing in when you get here. You might not have noticed at the top of the sign-in sheet, it says this is a public document. And we have had members of the committee or who've presented bills request not copies of the sign-in sheets, but your names and contact information. And so I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. Our policy in the Senate Judiciary Committee is to share that information with the members of the committee if they ask. It's usually because they want to follow up with you or because you ask to follow up with them. But if there are any issues, please let me know. You don't have to fill out the contact information if you don't want to, or if you want to provide it confidentially, you can just email it to me. Again, I don't foresee this being an issue. I just wanted to address it with all of you since it did come up earlier this session. So I think that the sign-ins are actually very useful for both of us, for you and for us, so that we can communicate with you about bills and hearings and things that you're interested in. And with that, we are ready to move to our two bill hearings for today. Mr. Attorney General, I don't know if you have a preference for the order that we go in. So we will go in numerical order, starting with SB 36.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Great to be here with you. My name is Aaron Ford, and I am your Attorney General. Again, delighted to be here with you to have a conversation around two bills that my office will be presenting to you today, Senate Bill 36 and Senate Bill 38. You will hear from my colleague, my Chief of Prosecutions, Alyssa Engler, on Senate Bill 36, and you will hear from others in the audience, colleagues working on this bill on Senate Bill 38 as well. I beg your indulgence, Madam Senator, if you will allow me after I make the introduction to exit. I would appreciate that, but I have my colleagues here to be able to answer questions, and we can certainly follow up if there are other questions that can't be answered today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you very well for that. In that regard, then I will introduce my colleague, Alyssa Engler, who is my Chief of Prosecutions, to go over Senate Bill 36. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 36. For the record, my name is Alyssa Engler. I'm the Chief Deputy Attorney General for the Nevada Attorney General's Criminal Prosecution Unit. I'm here to speak in support of SB 36, which is proposed to address amendments to NRS 176-133, NRS 176-135, NRS 176-139, and NRS 176A.110. Existing law provides that a person who solicits a child for prostitution is guilty of a felony pursuant to NRS 201-354. However, the crime is not listed as a sexual offense anywhere within the Nevada revised statutes. Therefore, existing law does not require or allow for a psychosexual evaluation to be arranged prior to sentencing. A psychosexual evaluation is a report prepared by a licensed professional following a clinical interview. The evaluation uses different instruments to assess a defendant's risk level to the community and the individual's likelihood to reoffend. One instrument that is utilized is the Sexual Violence Risk 20, a checklist, which is a 20-item checklist for risk factors of sexual violence. The item level information is integrated into a summary judgment of the level of risk, low, moderate, or high risk. Another instrument is the Static 2002R. This is an instrument designed to assist in the predication of sexual and violent recidivism of sexual offenders. It consists of 24 items and produces estimates for future risk based on a number of factors present in any one individual. In addition to determine an individual's risk level and likelihood of recidivism, the evaluation also makes recommendations as to treatment should a court grant probation. Psychosexual evaluations are a critical tool to a fair criminal justice system. Pre-conviction, these evaluations can be utilized to reach plea agreements. Post-entry of plea, these evaluations assist the court in determining the appropriate sentence for a defendant. The sentence can include probation with treatment. The proposed amendments are necessary to allow for evaluations to be ordered when a defendant does not plead to a sexual offense. Additionally, as to solicitation of a child for prostitution, the underlying facts of these cases involve an individual seeking to purchase sex from a minor. This is a crime where an evaluation should be ordered in every case. Please allow me to provide a breakdown of the amendments by section. Section 1 of this bill amends NRS 176-133 subsection 3 to add solicitation of a child for prostitution pursuant to NRS 201-354 as a sex offense. Section 2 of this bill amends NRS 176-135 subsection 3 and 5 to allow for the Division of Parole and Probation to prepare a psychosexual evaluation as part of the pre-sentence investigation report at the joint agreement of the prosecution and the defense in situations where the defendant has entered a plea to a felony or gross misdemeanor that is a non-sexual offense. Similar to Section 2, Section 3 of this bill amends NRS 176-139 to grant the Division of Parole and Probation authority to arrange for a psychosexual evaluation as part of a defendant's pre-sentence investigation report and report if the parties jointly request the evaluation, including pleas to a non-sex offense. Section 4 of this bill amends NRS 176A-110 to add solicitation of a child for prostitution pursuant to NRS 201-354 as a sex offense. And Section 5 of this bill addresses when the amendments would be enforced, which would be on or after October 1 of 2023. Additionally, in speaking with stakeholders, we are working on an amendment that we will present to this body that relates to Section 2 and 3 that would amend when a psychosexual evaluation is ordered in a non-sex offense situation. The amendment would propose to allow that only in situations where the underlying crime was originally charged as a sexual offense, but the parties negotiated to a non-sexual offense. Thank you, Chairwoman Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee for allowing me to present, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you so much. Questions from members of the committee? I don't see any yet, so I have one question to start with. To clarify, that joint request that is mentioned in Section 2 and referenced in Section 3, or 3 or 4, would a line in a guilty plea agreement be sufficient to constitute a joint request?
Senator Scheibel, Alyssa Engler for the record, and thank you for that question. Yes, I believe that would be sufficient, that it would be in the guilty plea agreement that the parties are requesting the evaluation.
Perfect, thank you. Other questions from members of the committee? All right, I don't see any questions, so we will move to testimony in support of SB 36. Please make your way to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas to give testimony in support, and you'll each have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is John Jones here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. We are in support of this bill with the amendments. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and Senate Commission on Judiciary. I'm Chris Reese, RIES, representing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Any legislation that provides more comprehensive oversight and evaluation of sex offenders is welcome. I believe this bill will help us determine who's at risk of reoffending. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Jason Walker, Washington County Sheriff's Office, testifying in support of SB 36.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Greg Herrera for the record, R&R Partners, representing Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. and we're in support of SB 36 as well. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else in Carson City, and I don't see anybody coming to the table in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phone for testimony in support of SB 36.
Thank you, Chair. To speak in support of SB 36, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers wishing to speak in support at this time.
All right, then. We will move to testimony in opposition to SB 36. Come on down to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas to give your testimony, and you will each have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair. John Pure for the record. We're only in opposition as written, but as Ms. Engler said and Mr. Jones has said, we're working on a language fix for when the parties jointly stipulate for when that happens, and then we'll be out of opposition at that time.
Good afternoon, Chair, Committee. Erica Roth on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. Ditto. Thank you.
All right, and I don't see anybody coming to the table in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phone for testimony in opposition to SB 36.
If you would like to offer testimony in opposition to SB 36, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. Jim Hoffman, representing Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. We also oppose it for the same reasons as Mr. Pirro and Ms. Ross. Additionally, I wanted to flag an issue. We know that in rural Nevada, there are not a lot of people who can do these evaluations. And so that is just kind of an ongoing difficulty that we have that's not necessarily related to this bill. Just wanted to flag it for the committee's attention because I believe it's very important. Thank you.
Tanya Brown, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. We are in opposition of this bill for now. We haven't seen the amendments, but anyways, as it stands now, we'd like to echo the sentiments of the previous individuals who are in opposition. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chair. The lines are open, but there are no other callers to offer testimony at this time.
All right, we will move to neutral testimony on SB 36. Anybody wishing to give neutral testimony can come to the table. I don't see anybody coming to the table in Carson City. I do see somebody in Las Vegas. Please go ahead whenever you're ready and make sure you state your name before you start.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Scheibel, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is James Schubert. I'm the Deputy Chief for Nevada Parole and Probation. And the division is testifying neutral on SB 36 and would just like to inform the committee of the fiscal impact SB 36 would have on the Division of Parole and Probation. As mentioned, SB 36 adds 2 additional instances in which the division would be required to arrange and pay for a psychosexual evaluation. Sections 1 and 4 of SB 36 adds the crime of soliciting a child for prostitution to the list of sexual offenses, which would require the division to arrange a psychosexual evaluation. And in reviewing our records, the division had 48 cases of completing pre-sentence investigations for solicitation of a child. And this bill would result in 48 additional psychosexual evaluations and resulting in an annual cost of approximately $41,000 per fiscal year and $82,000 per biennium. And just for reference, each psychosexual evaluation ranges between $1,350 to $1,725. And then in addition, Section 2 and 3 would require the division to arrange for a psychosexual evaluation, and if the defendant and prosecuting attorney submit a joint request for a pre-sentence investigation that includes a psychosexual evaluation. This one's a little bit harder to anticipate a true number just because it's going to be a joint request. However, if we assumed an increase of 24 requests per year, again, that would be another $41,000 per fiscal year and $82,000 per biennium. So the division just wanted to make the committee aware of the fiscal impact, and as written, it would have a significant impact on the division by increasing the number of psychosexual investigations that we would have to complete. Thank you.
All right, thank you. For future reference, we do have copies of the fiscal notes, or they are available to us via the website. And as this is a policy committee, it's not necessary to come in and explain any fiscal notes to us. But we do appreciate your involvement in the process and being available to us. So with that, we will move to testimony in the neutral position on the phone.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to offer neutral testimony to SB 36, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers wishing to offer neutral testimony at this time.
All right, then. Unless the sponsors would like to make any closing comments, that concludes the hearing on SB 36 for today. We will now open up the hearing on SB 38.
Good morning, members of Senate Judiciary Committee. Teresa Benitez Thompson, for the record, Chief of Staff to Attorney General Ford. Thank you for hearing Senate Bill 38 today. The Nevada District Attorney Association approached the Office of Attorney General a few months back requesting assistance with some policy initiatives. Attorney General Ford reviewed this one, and we decided that this is something we want to support. So we are endorsing this bill. We gave them a BDR for the purpose of working through this language. At this time, I'll hand it off to Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is John Jones, and I'm here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. Also present with me is Detective Matthew Caldwell from the Clark County School District Police Department. I want to start off by thanking Attorney General Ford and Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson for both sponsoring the bill and working with us on its journey towards passage. SB 38 creates the crime of we're called luring a pupil. And luring is generally the conversations, communications, texts that occur between a perpetrator and a child that leads up to the commission of a crime. It is different from, but akin to, grooming. There is presently a luring crime in statute, that's NRS 201560. However, that statute requires, in addition to other elements, two major things. The first being that the child or the person have a mental illness, that's the word used in statute, or that the victim be under the age of 16 and that the perpetrator be more than 5 years older than the victim. So this gap in the luring statute does not cover some crucial ages that occur in our classroom settings. We have 16, 17, and even 18-year-olds in our schools that, again, are not covered by the luring statute. As law enforcement, we are unable to prosecute some egregious examples of communication that based on the victim's age alone or the fact that the intended conduct was not ultimately completed. That's generally because parents discover the texts or the communications, other teachers or students notice unusual behaviors going on and allows administration to intervene. So what we are left with are communications that evidence an intent to commit a crime, but that do not rise to the level of being prosecutable. And after the conclusion of my testimony, Detective Caldwell will give you some examples. So what we are proposing is the new crime of luring a pupil, and it's mainly outlined in Section 2 of the bill. Section 2, subsection 1 would prohibit a person with authority over a student who is under 18 years of age from contacting or communicating with that pupil with the intent to lure them from their home or from a place where the parent knows them to be without the parent's consent. So I do want to point out that this does limit the prosecution of this crime to those pupils who are under the age of 18. And I do understand that that still leaves a gap of children, but I'll note that a pupil who is over the age of 18 no longer needs a parent's permission to be someplace. And we understand that this would be problematic, and after speaking with LCB, it was determined that this could potentially cause more problems than it actually solves. Subsection 2 prohibits a person with authority over a student from contacting or communicating any pupil, regardless of age, with the intent to encourage them to engage in sexual conduct, to use a communication device to transmit a sexual image, sexting, or engage in any illegal act. And again, I'll note there is no age requirement for this section. Section 2, subsection 3 prohibits a person with authority over a student under the age of 18 again from contacting or communicating with the pupil with the intent to cause or encourage a child to engage in conduct that would make them become a child in need of supervision or a delinquent child as defined in NRS 201-090. This includes encouraging the child to run away, to violate curfew, to become addicted to alcohol or drugs, or become a habitual truant. That's the kind of conduct this third section is attempting to capture. The penalty for violating subsections 1 and 2 is a Category C felony, punishable by 1 to 5 years in prison. And I will note that this would be a probationable crime. And subsection 3 is punishable as a gross misdemeanor, up to 364 days in a county jail, and it would also be probationable. A person with authority over a child is defined as somebody who is employed or volunteers at a school and who exercises, quote, significant control or undue influence over the child. Now, there have been some concerns raised with respect to this language, and I do anticipate we'll work with others to further hone this definition down. But our intent is obviously for teachers, coaches, administrators, and other employees to be included. I'll note that the definition in the prohibition against student-teacher sexual contact just includes employed or volunteer at a school and have contact with the child in question. So we might choose to move towards something closer to that definition. And the last thing I want to point out with respect to Section 2 is the definition of sexual conduct for purposes of this particular statute includes sexual conduct that occurs through a use of an electronic communication device. Even though the victim and the perpetrator may be in two different locations, if they're engaging in sexual conduct through the means of electronic communication, that would meet the definition. This legislation also makes some conforming amendments to numerous other statutes contained in the NRS, and I can go through them, but I'm just basically going to be listing sections. Like, for example, sections 1, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, and 17 add this new crime to various definitions of sexual offense or crimes against a child throughout the NRS. And I do want to point out that this crime would be subject to registration based on these conforming amendments. Section 5 adds this offense to the list of offenses in which a judge is prohibited from ordering a victim to undergo a psychological examination. Section 6 adds that this crime is subject to lifetime supervision. Section 9 adds a requirement that a judge prohibit a person from possessing electronic communication devices as a condition of probation. Section 14 defines this new offense as Tier 2 for purposes of registration. And there are numerous other sections that authorize use of this conviction for various employment and licensing decisions made by school boards or the boards of education. Additionally, there are also sections that require the school districts to notify law enforcement and a child welfare agency of these allegations and prescribe how those child welfare agencies should respond. Finally, the last few sections list the offense, adds this offense to the list of offenses kept in the central repository records concerning substantiated abuse allegations. Before I turn it over to Detective Caldwell, I do want to note that I have had conversations with the defense bar and the public defenders. They do have some concerns about some of the language. We have received that feedback, and we're committed to working with them to narrow some of this language down. So with that, Chair Scheibel, I want to turn it over to Detective Caldwell.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Caldwell. I'm a detective with School Police, where I've been employed for approximately 16 years. I'm also the president of our Police Officers Association. My primary job the last 11 years has been to investigate crimes against children where staff members are the suspect or the perpetrator, most of which are sexually based, and we arrest 13 to 15 staff members per year for that on average. As adults in a position of authority, we have an obligation to protect our future. Every child has a right to a safe education environment free from staff members misusing their trusts for the purpose of sexual exploitation. There is no current statutory authority to criminalize grooming behaviors. This law will allow law enforcement to hold those that violate the trust of our children accountable for their misconduct. And to add to what John was saying earlier, there's a couple cases that really stick out to me, one of which was about a year or so ago, where a teacher was messaging a student. I think she was roughly 16 years of age, and he was saying things to her along the lines of that she has a perfect body, that he wants to have 5 kids with her. He asked her to move in with him. He had donuts delivered to her house because he obtained her address through the student database. So all behaviors that caused her to feel absolutely terrified of this individual. And unfortunately, because there is no law that stops him from doing that because of her age, we were unable to prosecute him on that case. And more recently, we had another case where there was over 1,000 emails sent by a staff member to a group of students where he said racially disparaging comments to them. He encouraged them to miss class and come into his classroom and hang out with him, and he offered them shots of energy drink, not alcohol. But to me, there's no reason to offer a child a shot of anything. It's just wildly inappropriate. Those are just a couple examples that I have, and I'm open to any questions that anybody would have here too.
Thank you so much. Questions from members of the committee. Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. You had mentioned that this was kind of there was like a loophole where children between, I believe you said the ages of 15 and 18, is that correct?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, 16 and above.
16 and above, so 16 to 18. So this wouldn't apply to like 18-year-olds that are in high school still?
John Jones on behalf of Nevada District Attorneys Association, Section 2, Subsection 2 would apply to an 18-year-old that is still in high school. That is the section that prohibits the person with authority from communicating with the child with respect to sexual conduct or sexting. So that section would apply to an 18-year-old that's in school. The other two sections, 1 and 3, would not. Now, if the child is 18 when it's discovered, but the actions occurred before the child turned 18, then we would be able to use this new statute.
I understand what you're getting at. I have some concerns. Just the subsection 2 and section 1 and 2 seem kind of overly vague. I just have some concerns that there might be some unintended, I'm using that word, it's my first time, unintended consequences of keeping it that broad. If you had like a coach or something that was like, hey, we're meeting here at the field, like, is that luring them out of their house to go there? Because there's no sexual intent like included in that subsection 1. Is that my understanding?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, that is correct. There is no sexual element in subsection 1, but I'll note if the child has been authorized to engage in practice, then that would be a situation where the parent is aware of the child's involvement in that practice. And you've got this section where a place where their parents know them to be. So in that instance, a coach texting a child about practice, a teacher asking a child to engage in some activity at school, then I think those would meet that exception.
I just, I feel kind of uncomfortable with the language. I don't think it necessarily captures exactly what you are. I just feel like it's a little overbroad. And that kind of brings me to some of these new definitions. I see as in, let's see, if you go down to some of these new electronic communications device or a person in position of authority, sexual conduct, sexual image, are those like consistent with other described meanings in other statutes of a similar nature, or are these brand new?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, looking through, for example, the statute that prohibits sexual conduct between teachers and students, they are different than that particular NRS. So that is what you've mentioned are things that the defense bar and the public defenders has brought to us to kind of tighten up some of this language, and we are committed to working with them to do that.
I'm also curious, obviously I think for our law enforcement partners as well as you, we want to make sure we have like definitions so they're not having to try to figure out what sexual conduct is under this subsection without and a little more guidance. So I'm glad to hear that you're continuing to work on that language.
Can I add to what John said? Matthew Caldwell for the record. Going back to staff members having communications with students, the district has policies that govern that, and they're supposed to use their district email address and use that for communication purposes unless they have some type of other need. And all those emails are kept indefinitely. And then us as detectives or police or prosecutors can request that and get a complete copy of every email sent or received by the staff member from their district email. So if they do those things the way they should be doing them, there should be no confusion as to what their intentions are.
Can I have one follow-up question? I do have a question about, it seems like some of this is captured in other statutes. I feel like I've seen this case before. So I'm curious why this is needed specifically. Is it a higher penalty than it is outside of this like educational setting?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. When the child is under 16 years of age, so 15 and under, we are able to use the current luring statute, which is 201560. And those are the circumstances in which the current luring works. The issue we have are the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, and we have been unable to prosecute those. So you have seen these types of cases before in your work as a defense attorney, I'm sure, but not for the older children.
Thank you.
May I add to that too? I'm sorry. Matthew Caldwell again for the record. When I view teacher-student relationships, I look at them this way. The teacher has special access to a child that somebody else would not have. I'm a 41-year-old man. If I came and knocked on your door and said, I'm here to hang out with your 15-year-old daughter, you would probably either grab your shotgun or call the police or slam the door in my face, maybe in that sequence. That would take place. But if I was a teacher at a school and I said, hey, John's going to stay after school with me today, and I'm going to help him study. You're going to trust that relationship because I'm in a position of authority and a position of trust. And that's why we really need a law like this to protect the kids and make sure that that trust is not violated.
All right, Senator Don Darrell-Loop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. One is, what happens if this happened with a student and they're afraid to come forward or it's not discovered, and now they have graduated and they feel like they need to tell someone or the information comes out?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. What they can do is they can call our dispatch number. It's on our website, but I can say it too. It's 702-799-5411. And any allegation they bring to us that involves a staff member in misconduct, if it falls within the statute of limitations, we'll investigate it. And even if it doesn't fall within the statute of limitations, we will still investigate that crime to determine if something took place. And we have in the past as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And then remind us what the sequence is. In other words, you find this out, you interview probably, right? If there's an arrest or not an arrest, the teacher or whoever it is, coach, is put on administrative leave. Am I clear with that? They're taken out of the school setting, paid or non-paid, it doesn't matter. They're taken out of the school setting until this is straightened out. In other words, can they still be teaching?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. Typically what happens is if a staff member is accused of some type of misconduct, the school will put them assigned to home status, and they'll pay them, and they'll be at home and away from the students. Then from our side, the investigation standpoint, we will come in and we will speak with the child, we'll speak with the parent, we'll attempt to get consent to search their electronic device. And I've personally been to training for a mobile device examiner put on by the NCFI, which is the National Computer Forensic Institute in Hoover, Alabama, which is sponsored by the U.S. Secret Service. They give us a nice computer and a Cellbrite program, which we'll use to extract the data from their cell phone. Then we'll meticulously go through that data to determine if a crime took place or not, and then conduct as many interviews as is necessary.
So so they would not be teaching during that time, but unless they are arrested. I guess where I'm going with it is, could there ever be a time where maybe somebody's crossed the line, not quite far enough, but across the line, and they're put back into that setting?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. On the police side, we investigate the criminality of the act. If there's a crime there, then we'll take appropriate action. That information is then shared with Employee Management Relations, which is run by the school district, and they'll investigate for policy violations, and they'll make a separate determination. We could not arrest somebody, and they could still be fired. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Other questions from members of the committees? Vice Chair Harris.
Thank you so much, Chair Scheibel. So is it your intention for teachers who offer students shots of energy drinks to be captured under this bill?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. No, my intent would be that when there's inappropriate behaviors taking place and they appear to be grooming a student and they have some other motivation other than being a mentor or a teacher, that needs to be addressed. And whether it's criminal or not would have to be on a case-by-case fact basis.
Okay. So what about the student who doesn't want to let their parents know they're playing football? Is the football coach now potentially liable for a gross misdemeanor under Section 2, subsection 1?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. The parents have the right to know where their child is at this point. And if the teacher is helping the child circumvent the parental authority, then there's a problem. I don't know if it necessarily rises to the level of a violation of Section 2, sub 1, but there is a problem.
Is that a maybe?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, fact specific, but a maybe, yes.
Okay. What about a parent who offers a child refuge from an abusive home? Is that parent also, is the second parent also potentially liable under Section 2, subsection 1?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, no, as long as they're not a volunteer at the school who's exercising authority over the child. This just applies to school employees and volunteers.
Okay, I think that answers my question, kind of. So as long as the parent doesn't volunteer at the school part-time, this would not apply to them.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, that is correct. This is just for school employees and volunteers.
Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting the bill, Lieutenant and Mr. Jones. My question has to do with Section 2, subsection 3, the new language at the top of page 7, lines 1 through 8. If there's a communication from a person in a position of authority that leads to conduct that would cause the pupil to become a child in need of supervision or delinquent child is guilty of a gross misdemeanor, if there was evidence that, let's say, this person in a position of authority was encouraging the child to commit delinquent acts, whether it's thefts or graffiti, substance abuse, couldn't that already be prosecuted under the contributing to delinquency of a minor statutes that exist in statute now?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, potentially if the act is completed. But again, what we're concerned with here are the communications that lead up to the act being completed.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, may I, one brief follow-up? Thank you. And the child in need of supervision, I'm aware that's usually truancy, being out past curfew. Are there examples currently that you have where a person in a position of authority, there's a nexus to the child being truant or being out past curfew, other CHINS offenses or child in need of supervision offenses?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. a lot of the cases, when they come to us, they start with a rumor. And what usually takes place is a student will say, hey, I saw John hanging out in Matt's classroom when he should not have been there. So that does take place. The kid is somewhere they're not supposed to be because that person has authority to allow them to do that. And that does contribute to their delinquency because they're supposed to be in a different classroom, learning a different subject, and they're actually away from where they're supposed to be with somebody else. So it does take place. I don't have an example right off the top of my head to give you, but that's typically how the cases go. The person's with the teacher or the staff member when they should not be there. They should be somewhere else, which is causing them to be a delinquent child by NRS, and then it progresses into a relationship.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Krasner?
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. Thank you for your presentation. I just had a couple questions. You mentioned that a school must notify law enforcement in certain situations. What are those situations, please?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. If there's an allegation that this offense occurred, is when that would be triggered. And that's the amendment that it makes to the current NRS. As to the other specific things that are in law currently, I can't testify to that act right at this moment. But I can get you that information if you're interested.
I was just wondering, so is that currently not the law that the school must notify law enforcement?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. It is the current law, and what this bill would do is add this new crime into that law.
Okay, and then may I ask one more question? So there was a mention of truancy. If a child is merely truant and there's no allegation that a teacher or volunteer is responsible for that, will that be reported to law enforcement?
Matthew Caldwell for the record. I haven't been in the field in a while to deal with truancy. It used to be a citation for habitual truancy. I'm not exactly sure on what that policy is now.
And John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, it's same. I do know there are processes in place to handle habitual truants, but what that particular process is, Senator, I cannot testify to today.
And so this bill would not cause that. This bill would not cause a child who was truant for a reason that was not specified as to a volunteer or a teacher causing that action. That information would not be shared with law enforcement. Here's what I'm trying to get at. Traditionally, members of the legislature have tried to keep children's information private and not sharing that information between agencies because kids are kids and they act like kids. And so I just want to make sure that this bill is not going to do that. Thank you.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. So in reading the bill, if an allegation is made that somebody is a victim of this new crime in Section 2, then notification is supposed to be made to both law enforcement and to a child welfare agency. So the fact that a child has been truant due to the alleged actions of a teacher may come up through the course of those communications, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Stone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned that if a child has been the beneficiary of some inappropriate texting as a juvenile, but they don't report it until after they're an adult, that it's covered under the statute of limitations. What is that statute of limitations? Is it 2 years or is it more?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. It's at least 3, but it might be 4. And I'm sorry, I don't know the specific number off the top of my head.
Okay.
And I'll just chime in. That's something that we can probably have our legal counsel follow up on. Legal counsel's been called to draft more bills for us, so that's why they're not in the meetings this week and probably next week, but we can follow up with
Thank you.
legal counsel. I think there were a couple more follow-ups. Senator Dondarloop.
Yes, just one quick question. I think at one point there was some discussion, and Washoe County may have ended up doing it, where they said that students 18 or older, I shouldn't call them students, young adults 18 or older could be a substitute teacher. What happens if you have an 18-year-old student teacher with an 18-year-old student? Where does that line match?
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, they would be covered under this bill if they are in the capacity of a substitute teacher. Additionally, they would also be covered by the prohibition against student-teacher sexual contact. Right. Scratch that last part. So they have to be 21 for that, because you have to be 21 generally to be a teacher. So that scenario is not covered under the student-teacher sexual contact statute.
So if I'm a 19-year-old student teacher, or 18 or 19-year-old student teacher, I don't think Clark County did this, but I do think Washoe County, and I can't bring it up in my brain, but I think at one time they either considered or put it into regulations that they could be student teachers right out of high school.
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, there is the ability through emergency regulations to allow those with high school diplomas to serve as substitute teachers for short periods of time. I do not believe, absent an emergency like COVID, that they apply to the urban jurisdictions, but it does apply to some of our rural jurisdictions.
Matthew Caldwell for the record. I just pulled up the NRS. It's 201-540 for sexual conduct between certain employees and students, and it basically states in Section 1, subsection A, that the suspect has to be 21 years of age or older.
Other follow-up questions? Senator Wynn.
I have a question about the statute of limitations, not how long it is, but is it the intention where you have a scenario where, say, a 16-year-old had this kind of contact happen, and then they were 25 and they decided to come forward? Would that be applicable like some of our other sexual misconduct statutes are when it comes to juveniles?
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, I just want to make sure I've got the question. Are you thinking about the secret manner exceptions and the like? I actually don't know if they would apply to this, so I would have to research that and get back with you, but I think it's a great question.
And then my other question is to do with the contributing or the attempt contributing or to the delinquency of a minor. I guess my concern there is contributing to a delinquency of a minor and actually completing the act. So if you actually gave shots of alcohol to a minor would be a misdemeanor, and attempting to do this would be a gross misdemeanor. Is that correct?
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. So you're saying if they actually contributed and gave the alcohol in that one instance, I think, yes, that would be a misdemeanor. But what we're trying to get at here is the broad categories of conduct. It's hard to go through and specifically delineate what is appropriate and what is not. But what we are saying is that, a teacher should not be encouraging a child to engage in those behaviors.
Okay.
All right, Senator Harris.
Sorry I didn't get to this the first time. Why not close the gap you're looking to close by upping the age in the lure statute as it exists?
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, that came together with some intensive negotiations, the luring statute. So we're not disturbing the luring statute as it's currently written. So what we've proposed is this alternative.
Am I hearing that it's easier to create a new crime with, I don't know, this is like a 40-page bill, 50-page bill, than it would be to strike 16 and change it to 17?
John Jones, on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association, we could do that. And if that is the ultimate desire of this committee, we will certainly be amenable to that. But we did discuss that potential option, and the new law was the avenue we decided to go down.
Matthew Caldwell for the record. I think the issue at hand is that the legal age of consent in Nevada is 16, and it only is not the age of consent if the person works for the school district or is a volunteer. So if you just change the luring statute, I think that would be pretty problematic. If now suddenly you can be charged with luring, but you could have a sex act with a person and not be a crime.
John Jones on behalf of Nevada District Attorneys Association. It's actually a great answer. And so, again, we're just carving out a certain subset of individuals here, those being teachers and volunteers at a school. And so if you just strike it in the luring statute, you're covering a whole host of other people who I think the legislature may not be intending to capture.
So you don't have a problem with people being able to consent to sex at 16. But if they're in school, you want to criminalize some of their potential communication. I guess I'm not trying to, I don't get the logic behind it, I guess. I just don't know how we can say a 16-year-old can consent to sex, but can't be somewhere their parents don't know that they are, even if it's like regardless of what it is. So I don't know.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. It is illegal for an employee of a school district to engage in sexual contact with a student. It does not matter that they're 18 years of age, and in some circumstances that prohibition applies to university students and professors in that relationship as well. So what this legislature has said is that there are certain relationships in which a sexual conduct should be prohibited. What we're seeing are the steps that are leading to that sexual conduct, the communications, the grooming behaviors that occur, but yet we don't have a completed sex act. So what this is doing is prohibiting somebody from taking the steps that could ultimately lead to that prohibited conduct.
Okay. Is there a limiting principle on this idea of how far back we try and take the law before an act that is currently criminal becomes criminalized, right? So, I mean, I guess, are we looking at criminalizing threats before you actually commit murder, right? I mean, so what's the limiting principle on applying the philosophy you're applying here in other areas of the law?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. I would absolutely argue that the teacher-student dynamic is different. And the power, as was testified to by Detective Caldwell, and influence that teachers have over students should be sacrosanct. In other words, you should not be using that power and influence to encourage or groom an individual into engaging in illegal conduct. And that's what this bill is getting at.
All right. I have a couple of questions as well, and I guess I'll pick up where my vice chair left off. I'm looking at NRS 201.560 right now, our current luring statute, and it seems like it would be a much cleaner way to accomplish your goal to add a subsection C to subsection 1 that borrows the definitions that are laid out on page 7 on line 22 and add a subsection C, or a person in position of authority, as defined in the new bill, who engages in any of the described conduct in 201.560 of a student under the age of 18.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. We could absolutely do that. This is how LCB drafted the bill. We have no objections to that. So if that's the route this committee wants to go, we would be supportive of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the reason I think that it is cleaner, amongst other things, is I believe the way that I'm reading this bill, everywhere where it adds and Section 2 of this act, and Section 2 of this act, and Section 2 of this act, adds the luring of a student to a number of different sections of the NRS, including the section that requires registration as a sex offender. And Section 2 of this act includes subsection 1, which we already established has no sexual component. Or am I misreading it?
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. You are not misreading that, but I will note that it is still, as proposed in subsection 2, or, Section 2 of the bill, still a crime against the child, which would would still implicate some of those other sections that we're proposing to amend in statute.
Okay, got it. I guess then the last thing is just more of a comment that I do think that we absolutely have a duty to our constituents and to our children to protect them in the school setting. I also think that it is worth drawing a difference between a predatory teacher, coach, volunteer person in a position of authority versus a young person who is in a position of authority and making bad decisions that are not sexually or criminally based. And I think that this bill would cover those coaches, teachers, really coaches and volunteers who may be young and dumb, but not criminal. And I'm thinking particularly of those examples like coaches, and they want kids to come to practice early, and mom says no. And they say, well, how about you just tell her that practice starts at 10 a.m.? And they're really not trying to get kids to engage in a criminal activity. They're just trying to get kids to the soccer field at 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. And I think that they would be captured under this bill because they're encouraging a child to go somewhere their parents are telling them they don't want them to go, even though there's no intent to commit a crime once they get there, either against the child or with the child. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we do benefit from having younger people, 19, 20-year-olds, college students who mentor and work with our students, and they may make mistakes that shouldn't rise to the same level as those predatory teachers or volunteers or coaches who are actually victimizing children.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. I accept that comment, Chair Scheibel, and I will note that we have had similar conversations with some defense attorneys and the public defenders around those same lines, and I understand where you're coming from, and we have pledged to work with them on that.
Excellent. Thank you. And with that, I am going to move on to testimony to keep us moving. We'll start with testimony in support of SB 38. If you're here to give support testimony, please come on down to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas and begin whenever you're ready.
My name is Chris Reese, RIES, representing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel. SB 38 will serve as a deterrent for those preying and luring our vulnerable youth. For this reason, we support.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Committee. Jason Walker, Washington County Sheriff's Office, testifying in support of Senate Bill 38.
And good afternoon, Chair. Greg Herrera for the record, R&R Partners representing Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, and we're also in support of SB 38. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, and I'm representing the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and that organization represents all 17 superintendents in the state, and we're in support of this legislation and protection of our children. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, David Cherry, Government Affairs Manager for the City of Henderson. The city stands in support of SB 38. I just want to compliment the members of the committee on the very thoughtful discussion that was held here today.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paige Barnes with the Ferrado Company, here today on behalf of the Nevada Association of School Boards. We are here in support of SB 38. I would like to specifically call your attention to sections 19 through 25 and 33. We are here to promote safe and respectful learning environments for our children. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else coming to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas. We'll go to the phone for testimony in support of SB 38.
Thank you, Chair. To speak in support of SB 38, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers wishing to offer testimony in support at this time.
All right, then we'll move to testimony in opposition to SB 38. Anybody wishing to give opposition testimony can come down to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas and start whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. My name is Erica Roth, ERICAROTH, on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office. Now, I sit here both as a criminal defense attorney who understands the nuances in many of these cases, and also as the daughter of a teacher of 40 years. My father was a teacher of many grades, and I agree with the sentiment that teacher-student dynamics are different. When he passed away at his funeral, we estimated over 300 students showed up to talk about what a difference he had made in their life. The thought of, especially under Section 2, subsection 1, what if there's a scenario where a student who is living in an unstable home reaches out to my father and asks for a ride? That conduct falls under Section 2, subsection 1. What if one of my friends on the soccer team asks my father for a ride even though she doesn't have permission to go where we're going? He's a teacher, and that conduct falls under that section. We oppose the language as written because it's simply too broad. We're going to make sex offenders out of people who quite frankly, don't deserve it. I appreciate the willingness of the sponsor to continue to work with us, but I urge amendments that need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John Pirro for the record from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We have much the same concerns that the committee brought up. We are thankful that the sponsor is working with us to kind of rectify those concerns. We are not opposed to the policy. Obviously, if teachers are creeping out on students, that should be captured. But some of the things that the committee brought up create major problems. So we're hoping that we can get to a cleaner bill at the end of this. We could pass some good policy. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anybody else in person to give opposition testimony, so we will go to the phone for testimony in opposition to SB 38.
Thank you, Chair. To speak in opposition to SB 38, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Jim Hoffman, representing Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. I want to share the sentiments expressed by Mr. Pirro and Ms. Ross. I also wanted to thank the committee. That was a lot of very insightful questioning. I had not thought of a lot of those concerns. One other concern that I wanted to add, there has been a lot in recent years of students protesting, kids walking out of the classroom to protest school shootings, climate change, racial injustice, such as we saw with George Floyd. And teachers have had some teachers are on board with that. Some teachers are telling their kids they won't have a pop quiz that day. They're telling their kids they'll get extra credit. But as we know, protesting can involve civil disobedience. It can involve things that are theoretically crimes or delinquent acts. That is another concern that we have. A teacher who teaches their students about Martin Luther King, then the students go out and get arrested for protesting. Is that teacher a felon now? So again, we're not opposed to the core concept of this bill. We have some real concerns about language. We are committed to working with the sponsors to address those. Thank you.
Tanya Brown, spelled Tonja Brown, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We are opposed to this bill. The language is too broad, and we echo the comments made by the public defenders. But I would like to touch on something else that was not brought up, and that is, what if you have a 15-year-old girl? And I can tell you that there are some 15-year-old girls that look 18, 20 years old, and she is attending a sporting event in which a younger teacher, say 22, 23, 24, they interact, they talk, and the next thing you know, he's believing she is over 18 years old. She's not a student because she is lying to him about this. Now, what happens when it is uncovered that she is actually only 15? Do we prosecute this teacher because she was 15 based on her lies? And then if they choose not to prosecute him because she initiated it. She did these lies. They had a sexual act or whatever the case may be, and then they decide not to prosecute him, but the family, the parents, decide to pursue it. Where does it go from there? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are no other callers to offer testimony in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to testimony in neutral on SB 38. I don't see anybody coming to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas, so we will go to the phone.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to speak neutrally on SB 38, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers wishing to offer testimony at this time.
All right. Unless the presenters want to make any closing comments, that brings us to the conclusion of our hearing on SB 38 and to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. If there's anybody wishing to give public comment in person, please come on down to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas, but I don't see anybody, so I will go to the phone for public comment.
If you would like to offer public comment on today's meeting, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. There are no callers wishing to offer public comment at this time.
All right, then that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting for today. We will be meeting tomorrow, same time, same place. We also just published our schedule for next week, which includes meetings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but as of right now, not on Friday. I'm not promising there won't be a meeting on Friday. I'm telling you that we have our schedule for Monday through Thursday. That has been published online with all of our bill hearings, and with that, we are adjourned.